Welcome everyone, I'm Dr. Troy Spurl and we're here today to just talk to Julie about her journey in the healthcare world. So before we get started, I'm going to read my favorite saying: only God can turn a mess into a message, a test into a testimony, and a trial into a triumph, a victim into a victory. Romans 12:12, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. There's a reason why I chose that one today for Julie's story here. So our topic today is mold, Lyme, and the challenges of getting healthy when doctors don't know what's going on or what's wrong. And so I'm going to start first by just setting things up a little bit with how Julie came to me, and she really was the first one that introduced me to the concept of mold and did a lot of educating of me. And so it's really important for me to talk about how often that happens, where patients come in, we knew something was wrong, she'd been everywhere, she put a lot of work into it, and as a doctor it's important not to dismiss what's happening and work with the patient to help figure things out. And I would say that was a big part of it, with Julie taking the lead in the beginning and me just kind of filling in the gaps here or there where they're needed. So having said all that, thank you for your education of myself and your patience and persistence, patience in affliction, I'm going to call it. My first question is, what brought you to Synapse?
I had had health challenges for many years, and I had bottomed out again and needed to find new help in a new direction, and sought out your services and started coming and started to get some improvements and some gains, but the roadblocks are there.
Yeah. So before that, had you seen a lot of doctors? Had you been doctoring a lot?
I never got myself into the bottomless pit of the conventional world for whatever reason. That just never resonated with me. But I had worked with an integrative doctor and did the chelation therapy and all kinds of other testing and supplements, and had gotten better. And then I hit that bottom out place again and needed to find a new direction.
So one of the things that I noticed is when you were really coming in, you were really researching a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of part of who you are. And you would send me new information all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, where is she finding this stuff? And so tell me just about why that was. Why were you such a good researcher?
I think just determined to get better. I think I'd heard enough messages and chose to believe that I could get better and that I didn't have to live that way, and just wasn't finding the answer. So I felt the need and compelled to advocate for myself and speak up for myself and keep looking, because I felt that I'd heard the message that I could get better, so I was going to believe that.
Yeah, that's the hope part.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually you figured out and found out that mold was a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And we've since really dove into that world wholeheartedly, because we really found there's just a lot of people suffering from mold. In fact, 25% of the population is genetically unable to detoxify from the mycotoxins. So that's millions of Americans.
Yes.
And so they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So tell us just a little bit from your perspective on the challenges that came with finding out that mold was a part of this.
Well, as you know, I kept researching, and I had watched the documentary, the Moldy Documentary, and so I started going, well, maybe that was a piece of our puzzle. Maybe that's what was going on. So I had brought an inspector into the home, and not really knowing if I was going to find anything, we wasn't sure. But of course, we did have mold issues in our home. And then at the same time, I got transferred into a different school that school year. About the same time, we started remediation, and the air quality in that school knocked me down really, really hard, and had no choice but to keep looking and figuring something out. And that's where I came across the SIRS information somewhere in the midst of all of that, and had sent you an email saying, what do you think? Feeling really desperate. I didn't know, and wanting to continue to work with you, and you were my clearinghouse for, what do you think? Is this the path to be on or not to be on? And by the time you responded to me, I'd already made an appointment with the SIRS doctor, and it was on my way, because I didn't have time to wait. I was so sick, so sick.
Yeah, and with SIRS, we oftentimes see other complicating factors with the immune system. Your immune system really takes a hit, and then other things can start to come into play. So you were working still, which
Yes.
not everyone can work through SIRS. It can be very, very challenging. But you continued to work, and then the immune system, what other things crept in there?
I just had a lot of symptoms that returned in the midst of that. It was a lot of hormone symptoms, digestive symptoms, sleep, fatigue, like no fatigue I've ever known.
Yeah.
And I was working part-time, and I was able to move around within to a different location in the building, and that helped sustain me to keep my head above water throughout that school year. And I got transferred to a different school the following year.
And that helped being in a different school?
Yes, definitely the air quality was better. And then at that same time, we were still working on multiple mold remediations in our home. We ended up going 4 times through remediation in our home, because that was part of the long, hard journey of the mold story, is getting the right inspector and the right remediation team and getting all those pieces put together.
Yeah, that's a big deal, isn't it, getting, because we found out, that was a bit of an education for us too here at Synapse, that that a lot of people would pass a house as clean and clear, and then we'd send in someone and they'd find it, and it was a game changer. So we've had people improve once they actually got the right people in there inspecting the houses and stuff. So there's a big problem with how they're building the homes, and also how they're inspecting the homes and what they're passing off as acceptable.
And for me, a lot of it was just ignorance, and I come to say ignorance is not bliss, because we had water loss in our basement from sump pump failure twice, some water heater, and just dry it out and you're good. And that was not the case at all.
Yeah. So a nice healthy warning for a lot of people out there that if you've got any type of symptoms and you've had some water damage in the basement in particular, don't mess around with it. And even if one of you is okay, because we have a lot of people that can clear it, especially when the husband's doing well and can clear it, if the wife is compromised at all, and women tend to be more susceptible to this. And it's important, husband, it's important for you guys to listen.
That's how it was at our house.
Yeah, so yeah, no one else has symptoms, but you were being impacted.
Yes.
What for you has been the most difficult part of the journey?
Sometimes it's that pressing on, the disbelief that there's still more to go, that there's more pieces to uncover and more parts that have to be learned, and that there could still possibly be more after all that had been done, but there always was more.
Yeah.
So kept pressing on.
And we talk about how it's really important for us to get our mindsets right when it comes to that, because if you don't, you can drive yourself absolutely bonkers. This is a Job type scenario where it's never ending, it feels like. But you did some good work with your mindset, and it has served you well. And I know, or I don't want to assume, but tell me a little bit about your mindset shift and faith, if those played a role in your health and your recovery from all of this.
Yeah, I got sick after my second child was born, and I had not come to a saving faith at that point. So it was in the midst of already poor health, where I had to keep digging out, and faith and mentoring and good friends kept supporting and teaching and discipling me along the way, and really continuing to be pointed to truth and to hope. That really sustained me. And there were times where the mindset wasn't good. It was a struggle. It was ugly, and the conversations in the head were not pleasant, but yet, all right, you have to keep on going, and nobody can fix up here but me. So having to keep digging in and applying truth where it needed to be applied. And
and just because we have a strong faith does not mean there isn't work to do with your mindsets. You have to guard your thoughts, and there was some work you did. I know you've mentioned DRS in the past, and that's been very helpful to you.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to speak on that for just a little bit?
I never used the program to the full capacity that it's supposed to be, but I used it enough to get past the extreme mold reactions. I've used it in other situations where I know it's an emotional trigger and response that is behind a symptom or something that's happening. So I've used it, or just repeat patterns of things that I recognize as a default repeat response. I'll use the technique to work through that.
Yeah, so and these are things you can do at home that are very, very beneficial, because as you know, it can be quite time consuming and costly to address a big health battle like this. And so whenever you can find things to do at home that are actual beneficial, it's really helpful.
I've also come to believe too that it's not just the supplements that will make the difference. It's our mindset, and it's in dealing, as we just recently talked about, the emotional part of it, really finding that there were a lot of emotional roots that made me susceptible to a lot of chronic things. So working on the faith and the emotions and processing those out too has been, I think, the last big piece.
And it is a pretty big piece.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing any better today? Let's talk about that.
A couple days ago when I was thinking about that, I thought, I don't want to answer that question, and then I had to realize that no, really, I truly am when I think back to where I was 20 years ago and where I was in the midst of a really bad school year. Definitely better than that. Still a work in progress, and that's part of the journey, but compared to that, I can function every day and go to work and live a pretty full life. Still looking for that next step, but compared to where it was, leaps and bounds above.
And do you ever feel like giving up?
Yep. But I don't.
Everyone always answer that question so fast because it's so easy, because it's so common.
Yes.
But you don't. So tell us why you don't.
Again, I think it's that hope or that belief that somehow early on in this journey you came to believe, and I think you had told me too that, and you gave me a window of time where I would be better, but I believe that, and that window has come and gone, but still being told that you can get better and believe that to be true.
Yeah, we have a belief here that there's an answer to every single problem, and so God has those answers, and so it's important to hang your hat on that, and stand on that word.
And I don't think that's how I was before this journey in my life, but I've really come to believe that there is a solution to every problem. And you just have to keep looking and keep turning over a stone, and you'll figure it out.
Yep, there's an active part of it. And so I learned a lot from our journey together because of just being open to hearing what you were going through and what you were finding. The challenge for the doctors sometimes is our schedules are so busy we don't have time to review all the notes and stuff, but when you say, what do you think of this, to discern through that after you've spent a full day working with patients, to be able to go back and look at that. But you had a way of putting it in there that made it easy for me to go in and quickly take a look at it, and so that helped quite a bit, and that's a big part of the learning. So what we're finding right now is the doctors don't always know what's going on, and that's very, very common in the nutritional world and the functional medicine world. And so we're identifying that the doctors need a little bit more time to be able to step back and look at this information that's being sent. So that was a good learning lesson for us, because we've started to look at building that into our daily routine so that we can still, have a life and stuff like that, and be